I am Bannatyne Talsma, as I noted in the chat. I'm a business faculty at Kalamazoo Valley Community College. Very happy to be your host for this session. And I want to thank Dr. Mark Bannatyne for presenting with us today. He is the Dean of Technology at Mott Community College, a graduate of the British Columbia Institute of Technology, where he studied machine tool technology. He received his PhD from Purdue University in curriculum and instruction, focusing on technology education. Dr. Bannatyne has been a Fulbright Scholar on 5 occasions and serves annually as a reviewer for the Fulbright office in Moscow, Russia. Dr. Bannatyne's great love is international education for everyone and led study abroad programs in Poland and Russia for over 20 years. His research interests include the challenges faced by emerging nations in the adoption of technological solutions within education and industry. Welcome, Mark, and thank you for presenting today. I'll turn off my mic and video so not to be a distraction, and do a couple etiquette things here, and then turn the session over to you.
Thank you very much.
All attendees, please do use the chat function. Questions or engaging conversations, I'll moderate that for Mark and make sure he knows that it's there. Also, please ignore the share audio and video button. That is for presenters and hosts, and this is not an interactive video session today. You may notice that the session is being recorded. Not every session is going to be provided afterwards for attendees, but so I want to make that clarification. And lastly, I will be doing a warning out at 15 minutes and again at 5 minutes so we can know our time frame. Thank you for being here, and do go ahead and visit our exhibitors when you have the opportunity. We appreciate all of you being here. Mark, it's all yours.
Thank you, Bannatyne. Didn't mean to walk on you there.
You didn't.
Ladies and gentlemen, my friends and colleagues, it's great to be with you. I'm going to talk a little bit today about how you can start study abroad programs, or even reach out to colleagues in other countries, And I hope you're going to be able to see all my slides here, and we'll go. You know, there's a tremendous fear of international service learning, and there doesn't need to be. It's not as tough as you think. It's really pretty easy. And as you saw that I've been a Fulbright Scholar 5 different times. I'm a reviewer in Moscow. And I've also been the member and co-chair of lots of international conferences and committees. I have been on the committee of the IV Society in London, England, where I served as its chair and its vice chair. I also was vice chair of the ASEE International Committee for a year. And I love the international work that I've been able to do because it's brought tremendous value to my career and also to all my students that have been involved in their international activities. Sally Frost Mason used to be our provost down at Purdue. She then went on to become the president of the University of Iowa. And in a meeting I was in, she said something very interesting. We were discussing the rebuilding of Kabul University almost 20 years ago. And she said, we in the Western nations not only have a responsibility to reach out and assist around the world, but also a moral duty to do so. And we have tremendous resources and abilities here in the West that other nations are very anxious to be a part of. And so there is plenty of work that we can do to not only enhance our education and beginning careers of our students here in the United States, but also throughout the world. As a matter of fact, just before this meeting today, I was on a Microsoft Meetings link with all of my colleagues in Poznań, Poland, and we were discussing where we're going to go in the future with our work over there. Now, service learning has been defined a lot of different ways, and so I'm going to highlight the ones that I have found to be the most applicable, and that is it has to be a mutually identified service opportunity. It has to benefit not only the institution that is giving the service, but also has to be of something of value to the university or the college that's receiving the service. And I have always based all my service learning courses on competency-based and credit-bearing so that it counts for our students towards not only becoming more engaged in their career during their studies, but also helping them to get graduated. And we're going to reflect on the activity in such a way as to gain further understanding of the course content. And the people are going to receive an appreciation of the discipline they're in and enhance their sense of personal values and civic responsibility. And I remarked to my colleagues in Poland earlier this morning, the one thing I have heard more than anything else from students that have returned with me from Poland, and I took about 190 students there over a period of 16 years, they continually told me every year, I can't believe how much I learned. This was a tremendous opportunity. I can't believe that I have gotten this far ahead in my career already and my studies. I feel so confident in what I'm going to be able to do once I graduate. Now, there was an article that came out on the 9th of April in 2012 called Affirming Academic Values and Internationalization of Higher Ed, a Call for Action. And the authors who published that came out with 16 key points that are important for us to kind of globalize our view of what we do in higher education. I'm not going to go over all of them with you, but I'm going to highlight a couple here that I think will be of particular value to you to understand. Number one, that internationalization of any curriculum is a dynamic process. It's going to change dramatically. Now, when I first started giving workshops in Poland in the year 2000, computer resources were pretty thin. And as a consequence, we had to not only bring software with us to share with the institutions where we were teaching, but we sometimes had to adapt our curriculum to fit the software that was available or the speed of the machines that they had. Now, things have grown, exponentially in the realm of technology in Eastern and Central Europe since those days. But we took a look at what was available and we used the resources that they had to be able to do what we needed to do. And, it's kind of the approach of the old country doctor. You use what's at hand to do the job that needs to be done. And simply put, its form will follow your function. So where do we go and what do we teach was really a form of the goals and the activities we were able to create, giving the resources that were available to us. I'll give you an example of this. If I was to ask you all to name one software that you probably would find common in universities and colleges around the world, you'd probably say Microsoft Office, and you would be right. It is available throughout the entire world. And so what we did was, I was teaching in Poland one time, and they wanted me to teach a whole series of workshops on interactive multimedia. And so I selected PowerPoint. And what I did was I developed an entire series of games that could be created in PowerPoint that could use one or more participants in it, one or more players. And PowerPoint is far more powerful than we'd even begin to suspect. And we had great success with that. And when I was asked to teach web development, all you really need for that is Notepad. And that's on just about every computer in the world. You just need a text writer. And you're able to go in and start and teach HTML and CSS programming to be able to have students get a good foundation in creating web pages. So you don't have to look for expensive outlays of equipment or software. Everything that we have in the United States is not paralleled in the rest of the world, but a good bit of it is. You'll be very surprised at how technologically sophisticated some of the countries are that I have gone over to do workshops in. It has even surprised me. When I was a Fulbright scholar in Russia back in the year 2000, the university I worked for was ranked 5th in all of the Federation of Russia, and yet they did not have the resources to be able to properly fund their computer labs. And so what they did was they did what every other school in Russia does. They bought crack versions of software because that's all their budgets could afford. Now, I'm not advocating that by any stretch of the imagination, but those are some of the things that you might run into when you go over to teach in other countries. Now, constructing and managing your service learning program It does not have to be complicated. As a matter of fact, I believe on all the programs that I've started, I started out at the small end. I started out with things that were simple that we knew that we could handle. If it becomes too convoluted, it gets to be like herding cats, and it really shouldn't be that way. It should be based on what you're able to deliver and what the school needs based on the resources, as I've already said. Now, here's a question that scares most people when it comes to working in an international environment: foreign language abilities. Now, I don't know how many of you out there speak another language, probably a good percentage of you. You might speak English as your first language, or you might speak Spanish or another language as your first language and English as your second. Now, if you speak more than one language, there's actually a category that you belong in. So if you speak 4 or more languages, you're actually known internationally as a polyglot, which is Greek for many tongues. And I have a son that speaks 3 languages. He speaks English, Russian, and Chinese very well, all of them. And he's trilingual. Some of us speak 2 languages. I wouldn't say I'm trilingual. I can get along okay for asking directions and ordering off the menu in French because I grew up in Canada. But I'm really stronger in Russian and English. So I would say I'm moderately bilingual. Can anybody tell me what you're called if you only speak 1 language? Well, the answer is you're probably an American. And this is why some of the opportunities seem restricted to our colleagues, because they're afraid of the foreign language requirements and will they be able to manage with only being able to speak English. And I'm going to tell you right now, the answer is yes, you can. Let me show you a map of the world. This map right here shows in red all of the countries in the world where English is the principal language. Now, there's the United States and Canada. We see Australia, not a surprise. We see below Australia to the right, New Zealand. We see a lot of the old British colonies in Africa, all in red. But then we see a substantial number of countries in green. And those substantial countries, all those countries in green, have a substantial population where English is used daily. Now, I have a gold arrow there pointing to one country, and this was a particular interest to me when I researched this. Does anybody know what that country is? Well, the correct answer is Kazakhstan. Now, the official languages of Kazakhstan are Kazakh and Russian, but 57% of that nation speaks English well. And when I was teaching in Poland over the years, I had lots of students from Kazakhstan. And because I was teaching in English in Poland, they had no trouble whatsoever understanding me and conversing with me. Now, that's a surprise. You also might be very surprised to look to the right of that into the Pacific Ocean, that there's a substantial population in Japan that speaks English also. Now, being a Fulbright reviewer for so many years, and I've reviewed hundreds of applications from Russian scholars who want to come to the United States, I can tell you that the level of English that you'll find among colleagues across the world is really substantially better than you would even begin to believe. And among the young people also. In Central Europe and Eastern Europe, English is the preferred language of study, whereas once upon a time it was German. And the reason for that is that students know that if they speak English, they have opportunities in all of the red countries to work or to study. And that's a tremendous advantage to them. If I was to ask you what country receives, or what area of the world receives the most application for Fulbright scholars, you'll probably not be surprised to know that it's Great Britain. And that is the toughest area to get a Fulbright scholarship in, because the demand and the applications are so high. And as a consequence, a lot of people don't look at other countries to go and teach in. Australia is a great example. We used to send student teachers, when I was attached to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, annually we would send them to New Zealand to study. But while I was the co-chair of that committee, I also opened up relationships with Tobago and Trinidad, which is in the Caribbean. And you can barely see it's red there. Also, we sent students to Costa Rica. There's a huge population of Americans who retire to Costa Rica. And we had tremendous success with those students going to those countries. So you want to create some survey learning projects in your discipline. Don't look to work outside your discipline. That's one of the problems that I see with colleagues. They think, well, what I'm doing isn't going to be of any value, maybe in another country. Maybe they need something else, and I have to try and develop a program in a discipline I'm not familiar with. No, you don't. All countries want all disciplines. Now, here is a picture of a bald fat guy. That happens to be me. And this is my student who was actually an international student at IUPUI when I taught there, and she was from Egypt. And when I would take my students over to teach for study abroad, very often we would have a team approach like this, where one day I would deliver the lecture and my student would do the demonstration on the computer. The next day we would switch roles and my student would give the lecture and I would run the computer. This was tremendous experience for the students, not only to be able to teach, but to get in depth into their subject and understand it at a level that they normally wouldn't get into. And in my next picture here, I have two students. The young man at the computer is Tyler Bogart. Tyler came with us twice to study abroad, and the young lady, in those days, that was Crystal Kerr. She's now Crystal Simmons, has a lovely young family out in California. She came with us to Poland 3 times, and they were teaching as a team, giving lectures and doing the demonstrations on and off on a daily basis in illustration techniques. And as I was telling you, you work with what you have. This is what the computer systems look like in Poland when we started going there to teach. They've since replaced those big boxes with flat screen monitors and stuff as budgets have increased and the availability of hardware has come down in price. But you work with what you're given, and we had very successful sessions in this laboratory over many years. Now, you want to identify your partners, and how are you going to do that? Well, let me tell you something about the reputation of higher ed at all levels here in the United States. It supersedes just about every other country. Yes, there are wonderful institutions in Great Britain. There are great universities and colleges in Canada. There are exceptional universities in India and in Australia. But the United States has a reputation for being able to get the job done right. And as a consequence, that creates a tremendous pool of interested universities and colleges around the world. Now, you're going to probably be approached when you start this work by many institutions who would like to piggyback off what we can offer. That's all well and good, but there's a couple of things you should keep in mind. One is, countries in different parts of the world pursue different goals in diverse ways than we do it here in the United States. What you want to do is you want to find a partner whose goals and needs match your programs. We're not trying to fit a square peg into a round hole just to prove to our administration that we're engaged globally. It shouldn't be that way. You should be offering your expertise to those that want it. I've very often been approached by universities and colleges from other countries that say, we have a dire need for a particular subject. And I tell them right up front, frankly, that is well out of my area of expertise. And I cannot do that. But what I can do is help you find a colleague who might be able to meet that need. So don't try and be something you're not supposed to be. Next, there is a great move right now in the United States to globalize and internationalize our programs and give opportunities to faculty and staff. Now, I appreciate that all the names that you're seeing here on the screen are pretty big hitters in higher education across the United States. And it would be very easy to say, well, yeah, I mean, Carnegie Mellon, good heavens, they got a budget that's 5 times bigger than ours. They can afford it. Harvard, they have more money, they know what to do with. And who wouldn't want to be hooked up with Yale, right? But let me tell you something. One of the largest consortiums of study abroad and international programs that I've come across is in the state of Tennessee among their community colleges. All the community colleges in that state have an annual conference where they get together and they talk about all of the programs they have and how they can interact with one another. And that's one of the keys with engaging. You don't have to do this alone. You can look for partners in other schools and other programs that can help you join up together. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. So here is one of the other big challenges. We talked about language, and now we're going to talk about finance. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, my friends, money is not the most important thing in life, but it's in the top two. And the most important thing in life is getting lots of number two, because we need it to operate our programs. There's no question about it. We need money so that we can be able to offer the kind of program that we want to offer, but it's not that difficult to find. And there are some strategies I'm going to discuss with you that you might not have thought of. So the number one challenge in engagement comes down to a problem created by George Washington. That simply is funding. Well, okay, it wasn't really George's fault. But we do.
Mark, I just want to let you know we have 15 minutes left.
Thank you so much. Money is important. So how are we going to get money? A lot of different ways. First of all, promote study abroad or international opportunities through consortiums and sister institutions that already have study abroad programs. When I had my study abroad program at IUPUI, I accepted students from colleges and universities throughout the entire state. Purdue West Lafayette had students that participated. Private colleges had students. Indiana University sent us students, and so on. You could also build relationships with groups that specialize in international opportunities, like ISDE, the International Association for the for heaven's sakes, experience of students in technical education. What they'll do is students can apply to them and get internships all across the globe. And those internships are paid, including all of their airfare and their living expenses. You want to increase the number of foreign students by having cohorts come to your schools. And this has become very popular. While I was at IUPUI, we had a huge cohort of students that were sponsored by the Saudi government. But governments are looking for connections with community colleges also. And they use that as a stepping stone. You want to find institutions in Europe also that need partners for EU funding. And there are millions of euros every year that are never claimed by universities in Europe because they don't have partners outside of Europe. There is a special fund that I worked with where your university can get the money if you have a partner in the United States or Canada. And they say, well, we have a partner in England. Sorry, that's well, not anymore. It used to be in the EU. We say, no, it's got to be in North America. So those things are happening. Also, you can establish a Fulbright association at your college. And right now, Mott Community College, I'm on the international committee. We're working on inviting a Fulbright scholar from another nation to come and be with us to present lectures and workshops for a year. And we're hoping that's going to happen in 2023. And a Fulbright association gives you lots of different options and support to help you with your international programs that are totally free. So this is the most unique way of getting money and one of the most successful ways, and that is fund an international student program scholarship through return tuition funds paid by your participating students. And here's how it works. What happens is if you buy a 3-credit class, and let's say it's $600, the college will take a percentage of that as a tax and then return the rest of the money to the individual division or unit that is sponsoring the classes where that student will be taking their studies. That is to help pay for the professors and so on. It's a very common model used in higher ed. And what we did was we struck a deal with our college that we would be able to retain that money that was returned and put it towards a scholarship fund for those students who participated in study abroad. Now, the big challenge for students is study abroad is expensive. I've seen study abroad programs that have ranged from $6,000 to $10,000. That's an impossible hurdle for any student to overcome. So we took all that scholarship or tuition money that was returned, put it in a scholarship fund, and all our students had to pay for to go on study abroad was their airfare and their meals while they were in the foreign country. And what we paid for the rest through negotiations with our partner institutions and through the fund was we paid for all their housing, all their domestic transportation, and for all the venues that they went to visit for cultural events while they're in the program. I was able to run a very successful study abroad program for an entire month every summer, where I had upwards to 16 students in it. Usually about 12 was a good number to have. And I was able to do it for $5,000 a year. And that made students flood into our program. So, methods to engage faculty and students in international activities. You're going to find very quickly not everybody wants to join hands and sing Kumbaya, right? Why? Colleagues and students have no experience with international environments. You might be interested to know that 50% of Americans will be born, live, and die, have their whole careers within 50 miles of the hospital they were born in. A lot of people will never leave the United States. In 1997, spring semester of 98, I had a class with 94 students and I polled them, and I found that of the 97, only 54 of them had ever been out of the state of Indiana. I said, did everybody go to Chicago? It's only 150 miles away. And they said, nah, what for? So that is a big threat to a lot of people. I don't know how to travel internationally. I don't know anything about it. I don't know how to do it. Colleagues might not know how to create international projects. There's ways around that. Find people that have done it and partner with them. It's that simple. And colleagues see no value in foreign programs. No, our students are never going to work internationally, whatever. The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, we live in a multicultural society here in the United States. Any international or multicultural experience is of value to our students. And many feel this is far too busy and this is something extra to do. No, it's not, because you actually embed it into the curriculum of your classes and have it count towards graduation for your students. There's too much paperwork and hoops to jump through. That can be true, but it can also be simplified. I recommend you always start out at the small end. Build global opportunities into your programs and make it part of your faculty's load. It doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't have to be, an add-on. Internationalization is now a strategy to enhance the academic prestige, global competitiveness, and revenue of a school. There's no question about that. There are tremendous advantages to inviting more international students to our campus and having our students go out and have international experiences where they're going to be able to get recognition towards graduation through credits. And also, it is a tremendous line on their resumes when they go out job seeking. So, most international students want to send their students to us because they hope their students will return to their native lands with skills that they are not being provided with necessarily in the classroom. That not only increases our tuition revenues, but it makes for a greater connection with students in other countries over a longer period of time. Now, here's the situation. How do you get more students? When you have an international student in your class, find a way for their cousin to come and study with them. Students will last longer in international programs if they have someone that they're close to or more familiar with who shares their culture, and that will help them achieve greater graduation percentages. And 7, this was point 7 from that report, is that the first half of the 20th century is remarkably different from the second half. Now we're in the 21st century. And we have things that 50 years ago were still science fiction, like Zoom and Skype. And I have delivered lots of international workshops from my office when I was in Indianapolis to students in Poland using Skype and Zoom. And it was a great benefit to them, great benefit. So we don't always have to leave the confines of our little comfort zone. We have ushered in a new era of globalization, and I've underlined willing and hesitant participants. The world is going to change whether we're active in it or we resist it. It is. But one thing we can tell you is there are tremendous opportunities in higher education that we haven't taken advantage of yet to improve the lives and the academic careers of our faculty and our students. So here's a couple of final words. Start off slow and don't worry. It's going to take some courage, as I have at the bottom there. That's the little emblem from the Wizard of Oz that the Cowardly Lion got. You're not sure about how to do this? Start and talk to your colleagues who have successful service learning programs, and find partners who parallel your program's goals. Now, don't be afraid of this. It's not rocket surgery by any stretch of the imagination. And the fact is, there's lots of people out there that will act as resources to you to be able to help you get a very successful program started. Start off little and grow as you go. I started my first study abroad program. I did it by taking colleagues of mine with me to Poland for 3 years until we worked out all of the kinks and how we were going to offer our program. We went over for a month every summer and we taught in a variety of different cities. After that, those 3 experiences, we knew what we needed to do. And the next year we invited students. And once we did that, when the students came home, they became your best ambassadors for recruiting people for the future because of the wonderful experience they had. This is how I can be reached if you would like any assistance or have any questions right here. And with that, I will thank everybody who attended today, and I will be happy to take questions in the minutes that are remaining. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mark. That is very interesting and quite impressive in my mind, what you've done with this program, Academic Service Learning. I've tried some small things in my own area, but not something this broad. This is great. At this time, I don't have anything in the chat other than what I've been doing, so I hope people have been able to see this, and you're welcome to put questions in there if we have something for Mark. You did an excellent job finishing up quickly, Mark. I apologize that you were being rushed, but glad that it worked.
Thank you.
You are welcome. We have just a few minutes left here. If anyone would like to put something in the chat, we'd be happy to make sure that we have time to answer it. So, and maybe I missed this in my idea of going forward. What would be the one thing that you recommend someone start? How to get started? You said take your colleagues over?
I took over colleagues for the first 3 years. We had a very interesting experience the first year we were in Poland. We found a partner immediately that had every goal and every project in mind that we had in mind. And we used these experiments while we were over there to field test ideas we had for our own university. And we found it very successful. But we had one partner that we identified and we said, no, this partner it's not going to work out. And so I got a special call from the vice president in charge of international programs, and he said, please, would you go a second time? And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And he really convinced me that it was necessary to go. And we went, and you know what we found out? Second time was better. And on that trip, the president of the university came personally to me during lunch hour and asked me if I would commit to come a third time. And I said, okay. And you know what? Third time was a charm. By the time, you have to take things slowly. You have to look and gather the evidence. Don't give up if things are a little bit tough the first time. Don't give up, because it's like a little mustard seed. You plant it and it grows and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And yes, you will find experiments after 2 or 3 times that don't work. That's the time to cut them off. But in this case, I am so glad that we persisted, because it wound up being one of the best venues that we had.
And what topics do you think? By the way, Bonnie has put in the chat that it's great information. She thanks you, as we all do. I agree. What Do you think there are any topics that are better suited to academic service learning and study abroad than others?
Anything that has to do with getting people ready for work, how to write resumes, how to interview, those are always popular.
Really?
Yeah, always popular. Anything about technical writing, popular. But what I taught was we taught computer graphics. So we taught Photoshop and Illustrator and web development and introduction to animation, and those were wildly popular. And
So those are subjects you're teaching over in Poland and
That's
Russia,
right.
not that your students are taking this course. What is the course your students are taking?
they get internship credit.
Internship.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we actually built it into our curriculum that every student had to have an internship before they graduated, and we would allow study abroad to count for that internship.
Very fascinating.
Yeah.
So
We also had students that really went out and got internships with companies.
right.
We did, And we had a population at IUPUI that was very parallel to what we have here, usually older, more traditional, mature students. They had jobs, they had families, they had mortgages. They couldn't always go away for study abroad, so we kept both options open to them.
Sure. Thank you so much. That's very helpful information. We don't have anything else in the chat, so I think we will say goodbye.
Thank you.
But definitely appreciate all the information, Mark. Thank you for presenting.
Thank you, and thank you all of you who took the time to attend.
Yes.
I appreciate it greatly. I am here as a resource at any time.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.